Hey, it's me, Mads, Orthon, Gleam's producer. Right now, I'm honestly most proud of that last one. Even though, you know. Someone asked me today, someone I've known for a while, asked me today if I had played Dark Souls. And for a split second, I was offended. How dare you not know that I've played them all? But, I'm not actually that big of a braggart, so I realized that I just hadn't advertised the fact, so then I had a reasonable reaction, and that was nice. But it made me realize just how deeply into the games I am. I can remember playing Dark Souls Prepare to Die edition in, I want to say, 2014, maybe 2015, on an all-in-one computer, one of those touchscreen bullshits, with my therapist at the time, showing him, hey, look, I can finally play this game that I've wanted to try. And he was like, oh, what's it about? And I explained it's a really difficult game where you face challenges, but every time you, do that, you get to learn more about the challenge, and then you figure out how to overcome it. And he was like, wow, that sounds really healthy for you. This is the same guy I got into Magic. On the flip side, gacha games are not so healthy. I think that's one of the things I really like about Souls games, is that you can acquire all the stuff if you just do it. Sure, you gotta go find it. You gotta beat this enemy 100 times until it drops it. But at no point do you have to enter your goddamn payment information again. Because it's all already in the game, and the game doesn't lock off anything in the game with things outside the game. You could argue that the fact that some of the DLC stuff was unfinished files left in the game means that, yeah, they did, but I would say, no, it's unfinished, and they were hoping they could finish it, but then, it's pedantic nitpicking of the sort that I compulsively do and then shame myself for. So, no. Stop it. Dragon's Dogma, similar, you could get all the stuff. It might take a couple new game pluses like in Dark Souls, but it's all there. In a gacha game, they add a new character, and they say, if you really want this character, you could spend $200. Just to guarantee. And it's I'm sorry, to guarantee I get the character that's a few variables swapped in a new model, you want me to gamble away $200 worth of money? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, how do you have a successful business? And they're like, the character's really pretty. I'm just glad I don't play those games anymore. At the time that I got into it, I was very invested in a relationship with someone who sort of, I can't say through no fault of their own, but through no malice of their own, kind of dragged me down a dark path with them in terms of spending money on gacha games for a while. I escaped it, but my credit card still bears the scars. Which brings me to my next point. Today, as in the day that this releases, not now in which I'm recording it, which is the day before today, aka yesterday, even though time is linear. So actually, today is the day before tomorrow, which is the day that you'll be hearing this. People can't time travel, but ideas can. The way you felt at whatever time, however long ago, can travel through time, through the internet, to how you feel now, and be like, hey, remember me? Anyway, today, in the character of this releasing, is the day before Halloween. And tomorrow, therefore, is Walpurgis. And therefore, today is the day before Halloween. Point of which being, tomorrow, from the perspective of now that you are hearing this, so on Halloween, I will be, well, I'll correct myself if I'm wrong, but I should be making a Patreon page available to subscribe to. It's hard to ask for help when you feel like you're not in an absolute crisis, but I don't know, I've just always identified more as a gamer than as anything else, really, more than a human. Like, if I were a machine intelligence, I'm sure I'd still play games, chess or whatever. Probably way more chess, because you could play that real fast when you're a computer. Anyway, and I've worked other jobs. The last one I really liked, and I got really invested in it, and I kind of trusted them too much, and then they stabbed me in the face, metaphorically. And before that, it was just a really exhausting, burning the candle at both ends restaurant job, where I would get in trouble for pointing out people breaking the rules, just like, minor things. But I still am, but I was too, autistic. So I was like, hey, aren't these rules about food safety important? Didn't we sign a thing saying that we'll follow them? Like, shut the fuck up, stop texting that. Stuff was pretty nuts. There was one job at a grocery store, like a little ooh-woo small business, where I had an anxiety attack, and it caused me to lose control of my legs and thereby fall onto the ground. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Sometime in the last year, I had an actual seizure, which was enlightening. That was, in fact, quite what it felt like. It felt like lightning in my head, like black and white, electricity, static. What was happening is I was talking to this, I was flirting online, and I went to make coffee so I could flirt for longer. It was 1 a.m., and I was watching the house alone, and it was the weekend, so I was like, a little bit sleep deprived, I'll admit. But, there's always circumstances, aren't there? And while the coffee is finishing up brewing, like, I've already turned off the stove, thank goodness, I walk into the dining room, and I do this big stretch. And I stretch my arms up and out, not quite praise the sun. It was more like, I can reach it if I try. But also diagonal. I don't know. But the point is, I was popping my chest. Because I got this thing. I don't know if anyone else has this. If anyone has this and has been to a doctor and had it explained to them, I'd love to have an explanation. I've got this thing where, like, in my sternum, I guess, I don't even know what it is, but that zone, when I pull my shoulders back and stretch my arms up, it'll sometimes pop. And sometimes pretty intensely. In this case, it popped so intensely that I guess it was just like the nervous input that broke the brain's back. Because next thing I knew, after I felt the pop, I was curled up on the ground, shaking, just sort of like shivering, and I was like, oh, that's funny, I'm not cold. Why do I feel like I just came out of TV static? And I was like, wait, what's going on? Why can't I? And like, as I thought more clearly, I don't remember hitting the ground. I remember being on the ground and being really confused, and unable to think. Like, my head was totally full. And as it emptied out, I started to realize what had happened and be able to, control my limbs and stuff. And it was really short and brief. Two things that mean the same thing. Minor, I meant. It wasn't very intense, but it was pretty spooky. And it hasn't happened since, but it does make me think, oh, I probably do have some sort of thing. a condition of some sort, perhaps, that causes my body to have a little bit of a problem processing nervous input while I'm extremely stressed. So that was like the one upside was, oh yeah, I guess that is a real problem I have and not just a make-believe problem that I was trying to use to justify I don't know what. But, you know, someone tells you you're lying enough times and you're like, well, am I though? And then, you know, you fall on the ground and you're like, oh no, I wasn't lying. In fact, this sucks actually. It's so funny. I reverse Occam's razor anti-hypochondria myself. It's like, well, that explanation would make too much sense and explain too many things and be too convenient. So therefore, that can't be why you're like this. You can't like dressing up in girls' clothes because you're trans. That's ridiculous. You wouldn't have started doing that until you were like, oh. Like, literally, literally preschool. And you might say, oh, that doesn't count. Everyone dresses up as a princess in preschool. And they're like, okay, all right. How about kindergarten? How about first grade? How about second grade? You know, I would say, no, there was really no time where it didn't at least fascinate me. A few other things too, but, you know, like, it's more preference stuff. I would also prefer to continue breathing, and that's also a preference. Sorry, I was reminiscing about a conversation I had with the cashier and seeing if I could make it entertaining. In the process, I went entirely silent, thereby ensuring that that portion of the podcast will just be cut out. And then I'll be talking about, like, my mental digression, and you'll be like, what are you talking about? You cut it out. Okay. And then you'll listen to that. Yeah, and here you are. Now you're here. So glad to have you. Truly am. I've always wanted an audience. The thing that got me expelled the one time that did happen was my reaction to being laughed at when I read a poem. This was in 3rd grade? 4th grade? Something like that. But it wasn't just, you know, one person. It was literally, I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating because memory is slipped, but it really seemed like at least most of the kids in the class were laughing. I want to say all, but I'm sure that's an exaggeration. Probably one person was like, I like it though. I get it. You know, like I assume someone was smart enough in that room of idiots. That's most of what I remember from childhood. There was a girl I liked, and she sort of formed my idea of what beauty was, just because she was like the one girl who... She was never actually mean, and she never contributed to the meanness or engaged in it. She was... I don't know, I think she was shy, in hindsight. I don't think she liked me or anything, but she didn't have the heart to be like, hey, leave me alone either, so I drew a heart for her via Cartesian coordinates on graph paper. And I gave it to her. And she was like, oh, how cool. And I still remember it, and I doubt she does. But just the fact that she took the paper from me and didn't immediately rip it up or crumple it up in front of me, that was better than anything else I was getting in my life at the time. So I just associated her passive kindness with affection. It was the era of coming of age stories being about how when you succeed, the girl you like will like you. So therefore you must succeed, and if you don't succeed, then she won't like you, and if she doesn't like you, that means you didn't really succeed. It means you succeeded wrong. Kind of movies and TV shows. So that was a great influence to have. I definitely feel like I'll keep that one. I remember climbing up this steep concrete hill. Not because I had to, because I wanted to get to the bus. It was right next to the stairs and you weren't supposed to climb it, but it was more fun than the stairs, you know? I was always, like, proud of how quick I could skitter up it on all fours, like, feet and hands. Like, not knees and hands, feet and hands. Because my favorite superhero was and still is Spider-Man. God. I played the heck out of Spider-Man 2 for the PlayStation 2. I have never played a game like it. Well, I have played games like it, but I've never played a game like it as good as it. A game of the same type on its level. So that's one thing I remember, is the games I played as a kid. There was the Sonic Mega Collection Plus, question mark, which didn't have Sonic comics in it, but it did have Sonic comic covers. It also had Sonic Spinball, which was super fun. I remember I had a friend who couldn't watch me play it because, like, we'd hang out and take turns because it didn't have multiplayer for some reason. Actually, come to think, it was a pinball game. Of course, it didn't have multiplayer. Anyway, didn't want to watch that one. Like, insisted I would play something else when we hung out of the Sonic games. Because there's a sea monster that eats Sonic when you fall in the no-go hole. You know, the bad spot for pinball. And it freaked him out. I played a little bit of a couple different skating games, but not much. Ratchet and Clank, but never the first one. Well, I played the first one, but I didn't own it. So it sort of has an extra layer of mystique. I got into RuneScape way back, but I actually didn't like it then. I was like, this is dumb. I keep missing my attacks. My character is clearly swinging this sword at this goblin, and it's saying no damage done. Like, what the fuck is this? Why is the number 0? How do I make my numbers go up? What is a prayer? Like, what the fuck? And, you know, I was a kid, so I was on free-to-play, and there was no goddamn way back then that I was going to be able to spend money on... Anyway. What other game? Mega Man X8 and X7. X7 had a lot of cool stuff in it, and X8 had a lot of cool ideas about how to change that stuff. Mega Man 03, Dishonored, Metal Gear Rising, Devil May Cry 4 and 3. Devil May Cry 1 came later in my experience. Skyrim, I did play a lot of Skyrim. I almost feel like I played it so much that I got tired of it, because it's just like, whatever. I know this game. But I wonder how accurate that feeling really is. I heard about Oblivion in school, but never actually got to play it, and I was like, whoa, that sounds so cool. So, I think there was a lot of hype when I got into it, and it was good, but it didn't quite meet the hype as much as other games exceeded the hype. So... yeah. I don't know if I already said Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen, but I played the hell out of that. I got 3 different characters, well, 3 of the same character to level 200. Because the first time, I got 3 of the same character to level 200. Because the first time, I didn't level the character optimally. So I restarted and leveled the character optimally all the way from 1 to 200. And then the third time I was on the on the computer instead of the Xbox 360 I initially played it on, so I had to restart the leveling process. I have I don't know how many Dragon kills. Avalon Code was a goddamn masterpiece for the DS, and it's a shame that it never got a modern sequel. I would go into its mechanics here, but I think I might do a separate thing for that. What else did I play? Mentioned the Mega Mans I played, or at least the X ones. I played Mega Man 03. the most until I could 100% an S rank it. I think I looked up a guide for the last 2 secret discs, but I found all the other ones. So it was more like I spent more time finding them in the guide than getting them in the game. Because I was like, no, I found that one, I found that one, I found that one. I had a lot of bundle games as a kid. Just games that were collections of older games. I really liked Rampage. Rampage, yeah. I could only play that at the, it wasn't an arcade, it was a restaurant that had one single arcade machine upon which it had Rampage. It was like a roadside burger joint. They were honestly kind of mid. Even like through the lens of nostalgia, like, I was going for the game. Or rather, I was begging to be taken there for the game. Pool. Like actual pool. I don't think I've ever been or ever will be good at it, but I'll always have fun. And that makes it one of my favorite games, but I don't play it that much because, dang, maybe that's what I should start doing, is going to like pool places. Not the pool, but like places that have pool tables. Just doing that. Because I've noticed I don't have enough stories to tell. Like enough, I met this funny person situations. Because I don't meet that many people. And I've been trying to think of ways to address that without having a bad time. Plus, in a pool game, you're not stuck with someone forever. And there's not exactly stakes if you're like, alright, I'm done then. So, yeah. And you know, worst case scenario, if someone like tries to get violent with me, I do have a stick. They may have a stick too, but I'm better with them. Which is actually a liability. I wouldn't want to kill someone. In general. Sorry, I just started thinking about violence and the world. Yikes. I had this idea once that the military should be an emergency system only. And instead of that, if a international dispute cannot be resolved diplomatically, then their head of states, like whoever their top dog is, just one-on-one endurance, like, cage match. You know? They agree on whatever terms they want to have for their duel, and then they just duel. And the winner, you know, like, they stake the fucking land on that. Why not, right? And also get rid of all the political power that the chief of that has. Like, move that somewhere else. Maybe like a triumvirate council of like the top 3 candidates, like the top from one side, the top from another, and then the top that isn't associated with either of them. So like third-party candidates wouldn't matter ever, because it'd be the top 2 parties and then the third party, and that would prevent, you know, unilateral, ridiculous executive orders, because there'd be 2 other people to be like, hey, how about you don't do that? You're going to make all 3 of us look bad. So, no. And, you know, that would happen a lot. I feel like every citizen that has the... First of all, I feel like every citizen that is... I don't feel like you should be disqualified from voting for any condition other than not being old enough to understand how to vote. I also think if you pass like a college level course on political, diplomatic, socioeconomic theory, you should be allowed to vote no matter how old you are. If a 4-year-old could explain economics to me better than anyone else in the world, I would trust that 4-year-old to vote. At least on economics. But if they could explain that well, I trust that they're a single issue voter as well. Anyway, point is, I think all members of the voting community should get 1 day in the year. Not the same day for all of them. Like, divvy it up. Where they get, like, I don't know, 30 seconds of conversation with the chiefs of state. Like, not necessarily face to face, but at least on a Zoom call live. I don't know how it would math out. My eyes are closed for the whole recording, so I cannot look anything up or get distracted, which means I cannot right now look up the statistics for, like, how many people there are, say, in the United States. But I think people in power need to remember who they're there to serve. And I don't trust the kind of person who would try to bypass for the people with, well, those aren't our people. You know, speaking of actual citizens and stuff, like, depressing. I realize it's fiction that I'm comparing this to, but, like, at least, you know, Sinbad, for instance, in Magi, like, sure, he's a king, but he also loves his people and his country, and he founded it. Like, no one who lives there doesn't want to live there. I think the main problem with monarchies is inherited power. Alternate theory, not theory to that, but alternate leadership theory. Maybe there should be, like, a leadership league, and then countries draft their leaders. So you can be a leader of any country from any country, so long as you appeal to that country most. They just kind of, like, call dibs. So, you know, we could ship off a good amount of the far right to, like, North Korea. People would be represented by people who they want to represent them and who want to represent them. I don't know, an elected official disavowing voters. It's deranged, right? How did I get onto politics? The fuck am I doing? I was talking about video games I like. Like, video games I'm nostalgic for. Oh, maybe I was thinking about Metal Gear. Just, like, on this side. I played Pokemon Emerald, Pokemon Diamond, Leaf Green. Those were all good. A lot of people hate on Diamond and Pearl for, like, what was it, too much water? Like, was that the meme one? And then the other one is, like, there's too many layers to the world. But I honestly thought that was awesome. Like, hell yeah, I want an underground. Hell yeah, I want a sky. Sick. Surfing and diving? Neateroni. So, when they got rid of those features, I don't know, I lost interest in Pokemon at that point. Because I didn't feel like there was as much exploration to do. Gravitated more towards other games. Oh, in great and terrible news, I found out that the computer I was using is not good enough to do what I need it to do. So I had to get a new computer. Which, luckily, I got, like, almost a little more than half of what it cost. As part of my tax return, as my entire tax return, sorry. I don't want to go into the exact details, but it's a good enough computer. It's not the best computer, and it was on sale. So I kind of lucked out. But that upgrade also means I can play better games on stream. Or, well, better games can be played while streaming is also happening, shall we say. So that's very exciting. What's terrible is, I don't know how much longer I can sustain the amount of free time I have. So, I think I owe it to myself to make the most of what I've got. Okay. I I think that's enough podcast for now. Gotta edit this, record other stuff, edit other stuff. Anyway, where is that cat?